So I want to dedicate the shir today to Nechama Yocheved Bas Chaim. That was Isser, who's one of our Talmidim and friends in the shir. His sister passed away, Baruch Dayan Emes, and I'm sure if you have a chance, be menachem avol him, either in person or on the phone or whatever the case. So may your neshama have a lichtig in Gan Eden. So we're at chapter 3, Pei Gimel, on page Zion in the Tanya, Kadisha, in the Holy Tanya. Just to give you a brief overview. So until now, we learned in chapter 1 that we all have a Nefesh Abamis. In chapter 2, we learned that we all have a Nefesh Elikis. So we know now the true drives within a Yid, Nefesh Abamis and Nefesh Elikis. Now the question is, how do you access these drives? What tools do you have to access these drives? So in Perek Gimel and in Perek Dalet, in chapter 3 and 4, the Alter Rebbe talks about the two types of tools and instruments and programs that the hard drive has. The hard drive has ways of facilitating the Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Abamis, the godly soul and the animal soul and the godly soul. And in chapter 3, which we're learning today, it's about what we call the faculties of the soul, the Koiches HaNefesh. So when you learn Chassidus Avi, you have to become familiar. You have to. It's better if you become familiar with the terms. So when someone says to you, Koiches HaNefesh, you know exactly what they're referring to. And when they say, Levushe HaNefesh, the garments of the soul, you know exactly what they're talking about. When they say Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh Abamis, Nefesh Asichlis, you know exactly what they're talking about. Because once, you know, you're pre-programmed with the terms, and you've been explained the terms, and you learned it, and you understand it on your own, you process it through your mind and your heart and your thinking, then it's more meaningful, and you could develop the idea better, which is all part of what we call his bonanus, which Yonason, our dear Chaver and the Talmud, is involved in very strongly. His bonanut, meditation, reflection, contemplation. What I said before is all part of that. So in Perek Gimel is where the Alter Rebbe, if you have to point to a chapter in Tanya, where he talks about the faculties of the neshama, it's chapter 3 in Tanya, which we're learning now. Let's learn it inside. Perek Gimel. V'hinei kol p'chinas u'madrega mishaloshelu, all levels of these three, nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Throughout the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe will refer constantly to these three as a reference to the soul. Nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Soul, spirit, soul. It's three gradations within the neshama. So all the levels within these three, within the neshama, uneshama, klula me'eser pchinas, they have what we call 10 levels. In English, I would translate it better as 10 faculties. Okay? 10 faculties. Keneged, they correspond to Eser Sfiros Elyonos, to the 10 supernal spheres, which we call in Kabbalah and Chassidut Sphiros, or Sfirot, right? The 10 emanations of godliness, Shenishtal Shalom Mehen. So the 10 faculties are a chain reaction directly from the 10 Sphiros. So right here, the Alter Rebbe links together the faculties of the Jew with the 10 spheres, and he says Shenishtalshelu mehen. They are hishtalshelut. They are a chain reaction directly from the spheres. And this right here is a fascinating thought. When a person, ask an average person at any university, in any school, I have a mind and I have a heart, and I have behavior, and it's all human conditioning. What does the Alter Rebbe say here in the name of Kabbalah? The Alter Rebbe says here, no, Shenishtalshelu mehen. They begin on high. So your mind, your seichel, and your midos are all a derivative. A hishtalshelus means a derivative of something called the supernal spheres. Supernal spheres, and for our purposes, meaning it comes from holiness. That's what it is. It's holiness. It's godliness. It's godliness, the way godliness transports itself from the godly abode to the human abode of the mind and the heart. But that itself, Moshe, when you think about it, if you think about this before you daven and as you daven, it's not about my intelligence and my emotions. It's godliness inserted in me, which expresses itself through my mind and heart. So that's a very powerful thought as we continue. That's what he says here. That's why he uses the word avi shenishtalshelu mehen. Then he says at the end of the third line, hanechlokois lishtayim, and they're divided into two categories. Shehein sholosh imois. He calls them the three mothers, v'sheva kfulos, and the seven doubles. Pirush. Again, the word pirush, like we had in the beginning of the first chapter. Alter Rebbe understands that we don't really know what this mothers and doubles are, like what's going on here. Are we playing tennis or doubles? What's going on here? Pirush, this means chochma bina das. We're talking about the faculties of the mind called wisdom. Well, I like better, concept, creative concept. Bina, comprehension of the concept, and das, concentration on the concept, which is the CCC acronym, concept, comprehension, and concentration, CCC, Chochma, Bina, Das. And then we have the Shivas Yemei HaBinyan, the 7 days of building. The world was built kind of in 7 days, created, right? What are they? The midos, chesed, kindness, gevura, justice, tiferes, charisma or beauty, chuli, etc. So the Alter Rebbe says, v'kach, just as there are in God's method of creation, he used 7 faculties, 7 tools, 3 of intellect and 7 emotive ones to create the world. The world was created with these 7 modes. There's creation, Moshe. The creation consists of intellect and emotions. That's how the world was created. And hence we have things that are more of the intellectual nature and things that are more of the emotional nature. Why? Because God has that, and God used it to create. So too, now comes the moral, v'kach, so too, b'nefesh ha'adam, when it comes to the person's soul, the person's neshama, nefesh, shenechlekes lishtayim, it's divided into 2 categories. Seichel umidos, intellect and emotions. Seichel, koil chochma bina das, seichel includes concept, comprehension, and concentration, period. V'hadas, and the 7 emotive faculties, hein, avas Hashem, they are the feeling of having love for God, ufachdoi, fearing, v'yirosei, trembling and fearing for God, ulefaroi, is the 3rd midah of tiferes, to beautify God, from the word tiferes, ulefaroi, huli, etc. Those are the first 3, right? Because the rest are subsets. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. Then you have Netzach, Hoyd, Yisoid, and Malchus. So Netzach, Malchus is separate, but Netzach, Hoyd, Yisoid are kind of on the are on the same line as Tiferes, as Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes. Chabad Nikru Imois. Now the Alter Rebbe explains what he said, what the Kabbalah says earlier, which he brought. Chabad are called mothers. Umakar lemidos, just like a mother is a source for a child, carrying the child for 9 months, etc., so too the process of the mind carries the emotions which come later. And Alter Rebbe uses the word here, umakar lemidos, a source for the midos. Why? Ki hamida is saying Tuldas Chabad. What does it? Dr. Rebbe is saying. What does it mean that the Chabad is the makar of midos, umakar lemidos? And so he adds with the words ki hamidos, because the emotions hein Tuldas Chabad are offsprings of Chochmah Bina Das. What is the Alter Rebbe adding here with these words? Briefly, what the Alter Rebbe is saying is, don't make the mistake in thinking that the midos, the emotions, the way they function in this world, generally speaking, have their own way of reflecting themselves, of exposing themselves, of expressing themselves. So it says, generally speaking, the norm is that when you think about something, whether you create the idea or you understand the idea or you focus on the idea, it will lead to a feeling. And that's the natural, normal way. The exception is when someone goes directly from the soul to the emotions. Whether it's standing there on Yom Kippur or waking up one day and saying, hey, where am I? Who am I? And my life is in shambles, or my life is so great. And there's an exhilaration of soul power that directly fuels the emotion, and the emotion flares up. And where does that emotion come from? Not an intellectual process, but a soul process. That's not what he's talking about here. That's also true, and that does happen. And when it happens, we feel high, right? It's a whole different level and experience of emotions when it comes from that place. But the norm is, the Alter Rebbe says, and look at the words, Ki hamidos hein Tuldas Chabad. The normal midos, the normal emotions, are an offspring of Chabad. And therefore, for as far as a person's concerned, and the Tanya giving the structure of the human being and the Jew and how he and she are supposed to function in the world, the Alter Rebbe says, Ki amidas and Tuldas Chabad. So in other words, you need Chabad. If you don't have Chochmah Bina Das, there's a breakdown in the midos. And when we look around at ourselves, our children, our friends and community, this is a truism. This is so true. When at times we lack the Chabad, or we don't have enough Chabad, Chochmah Bina Das, the midos that come about are either wild midos, misplaced midos, etc. So this is why the Alter Rebbe says, this is how he explains the quote, that there's imois and sheva kfulos, the mothers and the 7 doubles. The doubles he refers to chesed, gvura, tferes, and they're doubled up through the faculties of netzach, hoy, yisoid. In other words, netzach is endurance. We translate it loosely, netzach, as victory, but it means determination and endurance. So the Alter Rebbe says that's a direct link with chesed. That a person has chesed and is so steeped in chesed that he endures to accomplish. And he's determined. And there's other ideas, but we'll leave it at that. So this Al Koponim, these 5, 7, 6, 7, 8 lines that we just learned is the beginning structure to understand the faculties that we have. And let's continue to understand this, to clarify it better. Next page. Key on top of page 14. Hine haseichel shebenefesh hamaskeles, the intellect within the human rational soul, shehu hamaskil kol davar, it is this, the human rational soul, that comprehends everything. Nikra b'shem chochma, this we call chochma. Koyach ma, the potential for what will be, for what is. Now, right here on the first line, the Alter Rebbe throws in, kind of without an introduction, haseichel shebenefesh hamaskelis. Hillel, where did we learn about a nefesh hamaskelis till now? we learned about a nefesh habamis, and we learned about a nefesh elikis. And all of a sudden, in chapter 3, line 1, page 14, we find the words nefesh hamaskelis.
I was just going to ask that same question.
Okay, so we're on the same page. And the explanation is that you could say that Alter Rebbe doesn't mean here a separate third drive. He means the nefesh habamis. Part of the nefesh habamis is the intellect and emotions. But there's also the explanation that he does refer to a specific third drive. And it's this third drive, Moshe, that's the seat of free will, right? If someone asks you, Moshe, where is the place of free will within the person? When they have a struggle between nefesh habamis and nefesh elikis, or yetzer tov, yetzer hara in classical Jewish literature, that's free will. Oh, really? Wait a minute. The yetzer tov is tov. The yetzer hara is hara. That's not free will. That means they're predetermined, right? You have two apples, green and red, and you choose red. Why? Because you like the color red, or you like the taste of red. That's free will. You never were free. You were always caught by red, or vice versa. So either I'm nefesh elikis or I'm nefesh habamis, depending what's going on, where I am today, and what I'm doing. So where's free will? There's no free will. So this explains that the free will is in this third drive called seichel, nefesh hasichlis. Nefesh hasichlis is the component that Hashem puts within a person to discern with their seichel whether this is good or bad, right or wrong, up or down, should I do it or should I not do it. There's free will there. In the nefesh elikis, there's no free will. Godliness is all it knows about and wants. The nefesh habamis wants to only be a behemoth, an animal. But then there is the human intelligence, and the human intelligence smells what's better than itself, i.e. godliness, but it's still human intelligence within this world in the person, and therefore enjoys life and wants physical life and wants indulgences. So it has a struggle. Intellectually, what should I do? That's where there's free will. So the Alter Rebbe says here, Haseichel shebenefesh hamaskelis, the intellect within this drive, shehu hamaskil kol davar, it is this seichel within this drive that comprehends everything, that goes about its job to comprehend everything. It's called chokhmah. Koyach ma. Chokhmah meaning, so you see here that the Alter Rebbe's interpretation, Yonason, of chokhmah is not the classical meaning of the word wisdom. A chacham, or a wise man, right? Again, we're learning Tanya. We're not learning Gemara. We're not learning Halacha. What is the Alter Rebbe's interpretation and meaning when he speaks about chokhmah? He doesn't mean being a wise man. He means that creative force within every person that has the potential for creativity. And in his language, Chokhmah is comprised of two words, koyach, the potential, ma, of what will be. And now, when the person goes about to facilitate their potential into actual, koichoi means potential, poil means actuality, shemezboinim b'sichlei. How? Not by playing with cards and looking at the sun and the moon, but rather this way. Okay? You know, Yonason talks about his bonus. This is his bonus right here. He's giving you the rules and items of his bonus to use. When you reflect, you contemplate with your seichel, with your mind. Lahavin davar lashuroi, to understand something very properly and correctly, and more so. Uli omkoi, and to delve deeply into it. Mitoich ezet var chochma hamuskel besichloi, when learning some intellectual concept that's in your mind, this is not called any longer avi chochma. This process, the second process used in the mind, is called bina. Why bina? Because it's understanding. It's contemplation. It's not just a creative thought. There is an idea. Moshe is creating through his beautiful artwork that I see in the background. There is the creation, the idea, right? What do I want to get across? But then there is, how am I going to do it? Before you put your quill and your to the paper and the parchment and what you're drawing. So there needs to be first the creative idea, the nekuda. That's chokhmah. Then there is the development of that chokhmah, the development of that idea, which is what we call here in Tanya, bina. Classically, we interpret that avi as understanding. What I said before is to use the word, I like the word to comprehend. To understand how, one second, Yonason, how this idea, how it develops itself. Yes, Yonason, yes, please.
In the Gemara terminology, there's a thing called the Kirche and Ba'amor. When you learn the word Kirche, going over the ideas quickly. You want to cover ground. But when you go for Oimek, means you take your time and you understand with the proportion and then you go into it. That's dinner. That's understanding.
Okay, you just said that in Gemara learning, you have something called kirsa to kind of learn fast and cover ground, and then when you go deeply into it, Ba'emek, he's saying that's the process of Bina. That's an example, sure. Let's continue. Says the Alter Rebbe now, Nikra Bina v'hein. Look at the language. I love the language here. V'hein, and this. One is with a nun, hein, with a nun, and then heim with a schloss mem, final mem. V'hein, and they are. What are they referring to, Moshe? Which are the heim? Moshe? Come on. What are the heim? What are they? What are they? Hein, Chochmah Bina. Right? He just finished explaining what Chochmah Bina is. Ve'hein, and they referring to Chochmah Bina. They are Av V'eim, the father and the mother. The father being the Chochmah process, Ve'eim, and the mother being the Bina process. The mother takes that created fetus and nurtures it and develops it, and 9 months go by. The mother spends 9 months making nice to this fetus, and then we have, what's the next word? Hamolidos, which gives birth, offspring, Abbas Hashem v'yirosoi, to the love of God and awe for God, ufachtoi, and fear for God. We stop there for a moment. In other words, Av v'eim, a father and a mother. I don't want to spend much time on this, but you need a father and a mother to have a healthy molidos, Abba and Yira. Sure, there's all kinds of ways to have children, and sometimes even necessary ways. But the fact that there's an avaim, the results are very different. Because the av gives something and the aim gives something. And it's not just in the physical, biological details. It's the Alter Rebbe saying that Yonis has said, there's Girsa and Oimik. You need Girsa, you need Chochmah too. If someone only develops and doesn't have any iota of Chochmah, there's a breakdown. Because then you can be developing shtus, foolishness, silly ideas. And we have people that are amazing in development of idea, but they're missing the nakuda, and they can build a big mountain, and there's no foundation, and one day we have a collapse. Rahman al-Islam Nebuch in Miami, the building fell down, the Surfside. There was a problem with the yesod, the foundation. In this scenario, it's the chokhmah. So someone will say, well, 1 second, I'm not strong with ideas. I'm strong in developing ideas, in articulating ideas, in facilitating ideas, but my cup of tea is not creating the idea. Yes, that's true. But nevertheless, you need someone else to give you an idea and for you to use your strength. And if you don't, you're walking in the darkness. And you can feel and you can present yourself as this big person who understands, and there's the nakuda that's missing. And the same is true vice versa. Someone who can intellectualize and create an idea but doesn't have any connection to the development of idea, it ain't going anywhere. We have plenty of people who sit around and says, I have this great idea, and I'm going to make a patent and come out with the world's idea, and I'm going to become so wealthy because people are going to buy and the government's going to buy. And we say in Yiddish, nicht gesteigen und nicht geflogen. I'm giving you this Yiddish phrase that is worth $1 million. Nicht gesteigen und nicht geflogen, which means it ain't happening.
I don't even have to understand that to know what it means.
Right, I know. Just the way I say it. Nicht gesteigen und nicht geflogen. Fliegen means to fly, to fly. Gesteigen means to be reality, existence. It ain't existence, and it ain't flying anywhere. It's all your imagination. That power of imagination is so powerful, and it can create this big balloon, and it looks very nice. But you put a pin in it, and it becomes deflated, right? What's missing there? The idea that is solid. And that's why when we learn Take, it's in everything, but when we learn, it's so important to make sure to have the Nakuda correct. Because once you have the Nakuda, then the development and the Amkus and Bina will be correct. And this is a very important, you're listening, you're working on this Bananus, this Nakuda, that you have to really, and in Yeshiva, when we learned Chassidus in particular, but in Gemara too, this was something that our teachers struggled to get us to understand and go on that approach. Because as you learn whatever subject matter, it gets fascinating and you get into it and you can create this whole picture, but you're missing the Nakuda. And if you're missing the Nakuda, you go off. And people ask, why did he or she go off? Whether it's off the derech or go off, whatever. Many times, most times, because they're missing the nakuda. You have to have the nakuda. And if you have the nakuda, you have the creative point that's solid, rock solid, the building will go up and it'll stand and it'll be developed. And the same is true as in business, and the same is true in parenting. You have to have the nakuda. So this is, we learn Tanya, we're learning over some Kabbalistic ideas and then explain the Chassidus, but if you want to bring it back home, the Alter Rebbe says here clearly, V'hein heim, hamolidos, avas Hashem v'yirosei. You ask yourself a question, I daven in the morning, I don't have the feeling. Where's my avas Hashem? Where do I have that heart palpitation for God? I love you, I need you. Where do I have that awe, that true yira? The answer is, check your nakuda. Do you have the nakuda? Did you learn about the nakuda? Did you develop the nakuda? Did you hang around and take tutelage from people who have the nakuda? Did they share with you how to get the nakuda? And for that you need a father. Av. Without the Av, you're missing the nakuda. Yet, having the nakuda and not having a mother, there's no baby. There's no result. There's no feeling, bepoil mamish in actuality, of love and awe. That's why it's so important to have an avo'im. The structure of the Jewish family is the avo'im. Yes, Moshe.
So if the nakuda is represented by the father, I'm just not catching what is the mother would be I know that the development of the nakuda, but is there something more? Is there another, symbol?
Yes, the mother takes that diamond that there is here, and she develops it, and she puts it into the right context, and she sees where it belongs, where it doesn't belong. I.e., ultimately, it's through the 9-month period of gestation where the fetus is in the womb that we have a baby. And if, God forbid, there's an issue, we know that there's a problem later because there was a problem in vitro. So in the nimshal, I think that you're asking about the importance of a mother in developing not just physically a child, which of course, but we're talking about the structure of a family. The structure of children is primarily, as the Chazal say, akeres habayis, the mainstay of the home. I mean, just yesterday in one of my interviews, fascinating interviews, my head's spinning from these interviews. You know, when you get to the right person who opens up, you see what later comes, years later, and you start understanding that when there's an issue between a father and a mother, and whether one was always working, didn't have time for the family, or someone who wasn't working much and did have time for the family, but didn't do anything else except sitting on a couch and playing on the internet or watching TV, we have a breakdown. We have a problem. So that Moshe means, so that's, you asked, the mother takes the nakuda and expands it to the right places. And if not, you can have a great idea and a great nakuda, but it's not going anywhere. And what will be the result of that? What Hillel deals with probably most of the time. It's not, you know, yeah, I have the addiction now. Where does the addiction come from? Why is the addiction there? You got to go back. And I'm not suggesting psychoanalysis over behavioral therapy. I'm not coming from that place right now. I'm just saying that you need to look at the Shayrish HaDvorim, the source. And the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, when you learn this piece of Tanya and other places, but this piece in particular, which is the kind of the chapter 3 of Tanya, is the chapter of the faculties. The Koiches HaNefesh, Seichel HaMidos, chapter 3. And you look carefully at his words. You know, when you say Chitas and you learn Chayenu, and even when you learn, Hillel had a share with Baruch, I believe, and they're learning Tanya and others, it's very important. But, you know, when you take, like, that's why I wanted to teach the Tanya, just taking the text here without commentaries and just looking at the words and seeing the words. So that's why I point out to you, Hein. You know, what's this language? He could have said Vehain without the other word, Hain. Or could have said Vehain without Hain. He's emphasizing. Vehain, Hain. He's giving you a shot in the arm. Hey, Pay attention here. Pay attention. Ve'hein heim, ava eim. Father and mother, hamolidos, avas Hashem, ve'yiras Hashem. And when there's lacking hein heim, you have either only chokhmah or only bina. One without the other, you don't have that proper molidos of avas and yiras Hashem. Okay, we'll stop here. I believe it's already time. Chavra, what's the time?
It's 20 past.
20 past. Everyone should have a great Shabbos and Parshas B'Shalach. And we'll see everyone with Hashem Monday, bright and early, with a lot of koyach.
Tu B'Shvat.
Tu B'Shvat, Tegiya, Chag La'ilonot. Sei gesund, Chavra. Bye-bye. Shalom.